Skills and CSC Academy, CSC E-Governance Service India Limited, and Jasminder Pal Singh, Punjab Government SMT. I welcome you all. Sati, now you can take it from here.
Thank you, Farhan, for this introduction, and a very good evening and welcome to you all for this important discussion on leveraging digital transformation initiatives through technology-based solutions for governance and public service delivery. Given that we are one of the most populous countries in the world and we have a population of 1.3 billion people, this is even more eminent and important for our context, speaking of digital initiatives for service delivery and governance. So thank you for joining us, and thank you to everyone in the audience who have joined us. The way we will run this session is that we will go into some of the interesting use cases and details of what our eminent panelists have been implementing in their respective work areas. And some of the work areas that they represent include health and education and passenger services from the railways, all of which are very, very pertinent. We also have a fair representation which is across states. We have Telangana, we have Punjab, we have the CSC team joining us, and we are also expecting our panelists from Uttar Pradesh and Dhaka to be joining us. So as I begin the discussion, I will probably pose a question to the panelists, starting with Naveen, on how digital transformation is really impacting what he is seeing in education in Telangana, and what have been some interesting best practices that have been implemented in Telangana with respect to the same. Over to you, Naveen.
So thank you, Swati, and very good afternoon to all of my co-panelists and also to all the viewers. So the question which you have asked is, I think, very pertinent, and we are at a stage where use of digital technologies has become imperative in almost every field of governance. And more so in education, because education, we not just use technology to impart education and also in our administrative processes, but also technology is an input for the students also, because they need those technology inputs to actually perform well when they come out of our educational institutions into the actual real world. So it's kind of both ways. We not only using technology, but we are also imparting technology training. And I think we are at a time when we are seeing a huge acceleration in use of digital technologies in the transformative processes. I can give you a number of examples from the state of Telangana, wherein the use of technology has impacted various components of education delivery, I would say. Starting from our admission process, we have a system which we call DOST. It is the Degree Online Services Telangana. So all our admission processes or admission to the degree colleges is completely centralized, in the sense all the students across the state, they log into this portal, they put in their details, they give their options of all the colleges and courses in the state, both government and private. And then the allotment is done based on their inter se merit in the qualifying exam, which is 12th class exam for degree admissions. And this portal has really transformed our admission system, not only from the point of view of transparency, but also a huge, I would say, convenience to the students and the parents, and also to the institutions concerned. Earlier, if a student has to apply, let's say, they have to physically go to 10 or 20 colleges which they want to apply, buy their application forms, fill it up, and then keep chasing those colleges as to when are they putting up the list of admissions. But now, since it is completely centralized, it's kind of a one place for application, and then there's a very transparent system which helps to do this. The second thing which we have done is also in our administrative processes, we do have a fair bit of computerization in most of our universities and educational institutions in terms of computerizing the administrative processes. But we are in the process of developing a completely and integrated university management system, which includes not just the university administration also, but also college administration, because the way technology has come in, we have systems which are probably 2 decades old and developed in technologies based on that period's availability. And also many of them are also working in silos. They don't talk to each other. They're on different platforms. So what we are trying to do is a kind of an integration of all the services within the university itself. Something like 19 modules it has, and it's in the process of development, and we expect another about 4 to 6 months this to be implemented in our universities. We are funding it from RUSA, which is the Rashtriya Uच्च Shiksha Abhiyan project. We got a 100 crore grant, 60-40 ratio of center and state for Osmani University, which is our oldest university, more than 100 years old. The third thing which I can talk about is in terms of evaluation. So we've implemented this on-screen digital evaluation system in our universities and colleges, wherein what is happening is all the answer scripts get scanned and uploaded into the system. Earlier, our evaluation system was no camp-based. So the answer scripts go to a particular institution, all the evaluators come there. From morning till evening, they're evaluating the physical answer scripts. There are a lot of errors in the whole process, a lot of delay. The teaching suffers in the institution from which they are deployed. But now what happens is the answer scripts are scanned, uploaded, and the evaluators can evaluate it from anywhere. And it is completely on-screen based, all automatic marks addition, or it also checks whether any question is missed. In fact, the system is so strong that there is a biometric entry into the system and there's a biometric exit. And at frequent intervals, at random intervals, the system also asks the evaluator to put in their biometry. The idea is that they should not outsource their responsibility to somebody else, so that they are the ones who are actually operating it. And we found a huge improvement in terms of not just the quality of evaluation, but also in ensuring that the evaluators do not have to leave their institutions for evaluation purpose. And the spin-off is that we have got such now rich analytic data. Which question, what is the pattern of performance of the students, not just question-wise, institution-wise, branch-wise. And this is such a rich data, which we expect that in a couple of years, as we accumulate more and more data, we would have a very rich understanding of the concepts, how the performance is, where the teaching is happening well, and that can really also address the pedagogical needs of the teaching also, in the sense that the teacher quality can be enhanced based on this analytic data.
That's really outstanding, Naveen. And, we will come back to you and understand what were some of your learnings as you implemented these solutions. But the one thing that really stood out for me is in the way that you said that technology has a dual interaction in the sense that you are, actually implementing technology, but at the same time, you're also responsible for imparting that knowledge. And I think that's really a very strong statement. Since we are on the subject of education, maybe I will go across to Jasminder and understand what is it that you're seeing, Jasminder, in Punjab with respect to this subject.
So as far as education, so first of all, good afternoon, everyone, my colleagues from different states, and to the organizers for giving opportunity to speak on this particular forum, wherein people from across the states are there working on different technologies, working on different sectors. So as far as education in our sector is concerned, as Naveen ji has already spoken about various initiatives being done in their state or other states as well. So we also thought of on a similar note that this particular pandemic has enabled us to explore all those technologies like AI or like ML, and even we used RPA also in few of the cases, wherein the process that we were continuously doing with regards to pulling the data from the emails or putting up the reports onto the server. So all those things were done using RPA in our system. In terms of admissions, we have now across the state for the higher education colleges, we have brought in the system wherein the student just needs to apply on a single portal. They don't need to apply to multiple colleges for various courses. So across the state, there is only a single system wherein the student applies the data, leveraging the data that we have collected from the CBSE over the DigiLocker. We are pulling that particular data and verifying the marks and the date of birth of the student from that particular data. And student need not now give an undertaking that he qualifies for a particular exam or for a particular course or not, because it is auto verified from the already existing authentic data from the CBSE. So there is a huge system that is already available across the central government or at the state governments, which can be leveraged among the other departments. So taking example from the India enterprise architecture. So because we provide solution across the various departments, it's not specific one department where we are implementing our solutions. So we are providing a platform to the different departments across the state or across the country, wherein the single data source can be used by different agencies. We are providing them the platform wherein the web services, whether that is a existing web service or a new API has to be created, and those things are now integrated among different applications so that the single data source can be accessed across the various functions. So that allows us. So there are students which are not that much tech savvy, so they are being provided with the smartphone. So under the scheme of Smart Connect scheme, under the chairmanship of our Chief Minister, we have given free smartphones also to the students, so that the 10th or plus 2 students, whosoever are now going for the graduation or the higher education courses, they are technology enabled. We have pre-bundled various educational courses in those smartphones, so that in this particular pandemic time, they can access to the courses via that particular e-books or the video books that we have enabled them. So these are kind of the technologies that we can definitely leverage. Smartphone penetration has increased, laptop penetration has increased in our society, and even different stratas of the society. So there is a huge opportunity now to enable IT into that.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful, Jasminder, and thank you for sharing that. And perhaps the new perspectives that you've added are with respect to beyond what Naveen ji said, which was around the integration and single window admissions. You also suggested some best practices around actually giving devices, which brings in a little bit of the hardware side of it, and also spoke about how digital content is being enabled on those devices and how that is helping students further their education. Thank you so much for sharing this. Let's move over to Rishikesh now, and Rishikesh represents CSC. Rishikesh, you would be seeing several best practices across states. What is your take on digital transformation, transforming the future of education in India?
Thank you, Swati, and good evening, all the panelists. And I would like to first congratulate GovConnect for bringing this platform and giving me this opportunity. Digital transformations have been there, and we are seeing the transformations live right now. And it's more than technology; it is about the data processes and the organizational change. CSCs have been working in the area of education. Then insurance, banking, and most of the G2C services with Government of India and the state government provides to its citizens. I think as Jasminder ji said, the usage of artificial intelligence has grown, cloud computing has grown. Many state governments are putting up their applications on the cloud platform. So scaling becomes more easy. The technologies like IoT, big data, 3D printing, virtual reality, all is coming, and many of the state governments are actually using AR, VR, and many other of those technologies in the curriculum. Also, it is real time on the ground only because we can have the technology and the infrastructure in place so that we can actually bring it to the ground. In terms of digital literacy programs, which CSC has run from last 5 years, world's largest digital literacy programs. We have done nearly 75 lakh certification during the last 1 year, despite the training centers being blocked and not being used. So people have been using technology in order to deliver that. Similarly, a project called TeleLaw, where pre-litigation advice was given to the citizens, and it is under the Department of Justice, Ministry of Law and Justice. And nearly 5 lakh people actually got pre-litigation advice. I think that is a revolutionary thing which has happened. Also, last year we launched something called Rural Grameen e-Store, which is a company which is rural and vocal for local is the motto. And we have been delivering goods at the village level and the Gram Panchayat level. That has seen a huge impact. Talking in for education, I think courses have been now developed which are being delivered on WhatsApp and Telegram. That is a huge opportunity there, because people are using WhatsApp for their daily chat and sharing of the data. But if it can be used disruptively for education and getting more skills, then why not? So WhatsApp, Telegram, and the OTT platforms which have come, because connectivity is there and broadband BharatNet is there. People in the rural areas are actually using that. In fact, also the credit linkages. We are talking about entrepreneurship and giving a budding entrepreneur the credit and loans, and that all that part has become paperless. And many of these things are actually coming up. In terms of healthcare, also CSCs have been part of printing Ayushman Bharat cards for the government of India. Telemedicine numbers have picked up actually after the policy change last year. I think there has been a lot of digital transformations, and I'll again I'd like to speak on some of these topics in more detail. Thank you so much, Swati. Over to you.
Thank you, Rishikesh. And this was really inspiring to hear, considering that CSCs have a coverage to almost 50 to 60% of our country's population. And what you just explained here is how you are revolutionizing basis the connectivity that is available at Gram Panchayat level and village level, how you're revolutionizing not only education, but also healthcare, also credit, and so on and so forth. So thank you for sharing this with us. And moving on from education to actually mobility, let's come to Iti. Iti represents railways for us here. And Iti, there has been a fair degree of conversation that has happened with respect to mobility, particularly in the pandemic times. And what is your view on how digital transformation is revolutionizing that aspect for us?
So a very good afternoon to all of you. It's very inspiring to hear my batchmate, who's Naveen, who's doing so much great work in Telangana, and I'm very impressed. Naveen, I must share this with all our batchmates, and a very warm welcome to others also. I'm going to be presenting a very different perspective, because while you all are concentrating more on digitization in education, I'm going to talk about digital transformation for the biggest logistic partner of our country, which is the Indian Railways. So while we are the 4th largest in the world, we carry the maximum suburban passenger of the world. So it's almost like we are carrying 1 crore people every day. And that is during the non-pandemic times. Of course, in pandemics, things change. So in fact, the digital transformation is the need of the hour for Indian Railways, being one of the biggest employees for the government of India. Not only that, the volume of work with which we engage. So we are dealing in about 67,000 route kilometers every day. We run about 13,500 mail express trains a day, and we are carrying about 23 million passengers a day, which is a huge network and a lot of people, and a lot of work goes into it. But if you actually look, digitization came into Indian Railways long time back. So when we are talking of transformation, I would like to segment it and suggest that we are doing digitization in the area of passengers. We are doing digitization in the area of freight. Then, like Naveen had suggested, that some administrative changes are coming in same ways. Indian Railways is trying to integrate its various areas of work and bring it on a common platform. So like we have this HRMS, where we talk about the passes which are issued to all the staff and the officers. So they are being digitized so that everybody can get an online pass in emergencies. Nobody has to run to the office to get a pass issued. A very small thing, but when we think about the 13 lakh employees that we have, it speaks of the volume of work which is going into it. Then we have come up with another app where we are monitoring the entire payment scheme which is given to the employees. Being a very large organization, there used to be a lot of frauds being conducted with the staff who's on roll and actually was never present. So we've been able to control that in a very big way. If we start with passengers for digitization, we have a passenger reservation system which started issuing tickets anywhere from anywhere. I mean, it's almost like 3 decades ago. But how have we improved that? Is that we've made it seamless, we've made it faceless. So most of our ticketing is now e-ticketing. So 70% of the tickets are issued online. Only about 30% people are coming to the reservation office. But in a particular second, I want to tell you that we deal with about 8,000 inquiries, issue about 830 tickets in a second. So you can imagine the volume of work that we do in a particular second on a particular day. And other than the mainline tickets which we issue for the mainline trains, we also issue tickets for the unreserved segment, which is basically the suburban system, where, like I told you, we are dealing with about 1 crore people all over the country. If you look at Bombay only, we are dealing with about 70 lakh passengers a day. Now, for that purpose, we have made what is called a UTS app mobile system, where you can issue and you can, outside the station itself, you can try and issue a ticket and get a confirmation and travel in the train within 1 hour of your journey, because after that it becomes redundant. And other than the passenger part, we have also got now what is called the Rail Madad app. We have a lot of complaints. Being a passenger service organization, a lot of people have a lot of complaints also. They have a lot of inquiries also. So along with the 139 inquiry that we had, we have now combined it and integrated into a Rail Madad app, where you can go and log in and you can go and find about your consultation regarding how you want to book a parcel, how you want to carry it. If you're having problem in the train, you want water to be supplied somewhere, you need to pick up some kind of food, you have a medical emergency, you have all the numbers all together on the same app, and you can register and you can have the thing delivered to you within whatever time limit that you have, or at the next station as desired. Most important changes that we did, and especially during the pandemic time, and when we come to the second round, I would like to talk about that in detail, because the Indian Railways did a stupendous job during the first wave also, and now in the second wave also, although the directions are different. But in the area of freight, we have really come forward, and now we have this faceless freight booking also. So being the bulk providers, even during pandemic time, all the others were just clicking away and getting things on Amazon and getting things on the Smart City app, or from the markets they were picking up stuff. But how was that service being provided? And that was the role of Indian Railways, because we ensured that there was no shortage of supply from one part of the country to the other. So like in a place like Shorapur, from where we started our Farmers Special, we saw that the fruits and vegetables reached as far as Bangladesh. If we talk of out of country, and Calcutta, the Seven Sisters, we catered to Northern Railway and to the northern parts of the country. So as a network, we covered the entire area with our staff. And how was it possible? Through digital transformation, we are able now to book our goods and services while sitting at home. I think that is one of the most revolutionary steps that the Indian Railways has taken place. And within a period of 2 years, now we are almost 65% with e-payment. When it becomes a cashless transaction, a lot of loopholes get closed on its own. We do not have to then look, what is the staff doing? Because other than what you see on the front part, there is a back part of accounting keeping, which is done by the Indian Railways, which involves a lot of hard work. Then other than this, we've started e-auctioning and e-indenting, which means that now Railway itself is procuring everything through the GEM system, which of course is being used by the entire government of India. But for us, e-auctioning is also a new thing, and our tenders have become entirely e-tendering system is being now carried out on Indian Railways, which I think is a real transformation so far as digitization is concerned. If you look at the average Indian, is using about 8 GB per month, which is much, much more than what China or South Korea are using as on date. And I feel very proud in sharing that Indian Railways has some bit of sharing in that 8 GB that's going on. So, we have platinum customers, like you have Reliance, you have JSW, you have Adani. These guys were given the opportunity of e-payment like facility, so that, they could book their goods and then the payment would happen later on, because we had a huge fixed deposit from these big partners. But now this e-payment facility, starting from April 21, has been provided to each and every freight customer of Indian Railways through a gateway provided by the SBI. So this again is a hallmark and a revolutionary step for Indian Railways. Yep.
Thank you so much for sharing this, Iti, and it was so inspiring to sit back and listen to you speak, because you went from passengers to freight to internal administration, and you shared some very relevant best practices, and we all know the critical role that the railways play. But I must take this opportunity to actually thank you and acknowledge you, because we all know that in spite of the lockdowns, as far as logistics is concerned, none of us faced any challenges with respect to essential goods and services, and railways had a very, very important role to play in that. And some of the initiatives that you've shared, right from e-auctions to e-tendering to e-payments to Rail Madad, IRCTC, we've seen, all of us have seen how it has come up. We all remember in our lifetime how we used to go to train stations and pick tickets, and how we've not been there for this purpose in the last 10 years. So thank you for sharing all of these best practices. And now we must move over to Dr. Hira Lal. And let's understand how digital transformation is enabling, some revolutionary changes in the healthcare sector. Dr. Hira Lal, you seem to be speaking on mute.
Okay, I'm audible?
Yes, you are. Thank you so much for joining in.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity, and I was listening to all the speakers. Everybody has spoke well, and nothing is left to me, because no doubt technology started initially with the railway booking. Thereafter, it is a big success, and thereafter your banking digitization is the second one. I think is a revolution in the digitization, and banking digitization brought much confidence of public into the digital technology. So as regards your use of the technology or digitization in medical, I have nothing to show. It is very visible, because during the pandemic, if people are living in their separate rooms in a house, nobody is in a position to help each other. So who helped during this pandemic? It is the technology. And technology helped not in the field of medical, it helped in all the fields for the survival of the life. So the resistance for adopting the technology or for getting digitization done is reduced to a greater extent. Now, public is of opinion that technology is beneficial for the humankind. So the resistance against technology has gone down. During pandemic, all the medical things are being treated by the technology, digitization, and Digital India. I'm not going into much detail in the past. Recently, the vaccination campaign is being monitored, statized, and done by the Digital India, and it is going smoothly. It is a very big operation, because we will have to reach slowly and slowly to each citizen of India to vaccinate them. So I am not going to tell, because no field has been left which is not using the technology. One thing I would like to mention, which is I have not heard from any speaker. One day I was listening in a webinar, a very renowned strategist. So he told we should not be andhbhakt in adopting the technology. So I was very astonishing when I heard his word, we should not be andhbhakt of adopting technology. Then he disclosed that in India, we need enabling technology in place of replacing technology, because India is having too much human resource, human capital. So we should not take up technology which will replace and which will increase our unemployment. So that is very relevant, and I am also agreeing to this quote, we need enabling technology, not replacing technology. No doubt that skill of our human resource needs to update, need to be reskilled in order to meet our demands. And one more thing I would like to mention over here: security. I myself is getting every day 2 email and 2 WhatsApp that I want to add on your social media site and I will give this much amount, this. Every day I am blocking on email and on WhatsApp, and every day I am getting from America, American numbers, such your messages. So what is happening this? Now we must be aware of cyber security. One day, not only one day, I have taken this, Times of India published editorial on 11th June. And Swagato Ganguly, who is editor-in-chief, he has written a very good article, and I would like to read. But regulating science and technology, especially in emergent fields such as genetics and AI, is now even more urgent than regulating big data. What we are talking about? We are talking about to regulate the data, because data is power. He is saying pandemic, genetics engineering, and AI is need to be regulated before the data. He has correlated these two things, genetic engineering and AI, with the pandemic. It started from, people are saying different source, China and virology, anything. So what point I want to mention over here: enabling technology we must adopt. We should re-skill or upskill our manpower. Third, cyber security is not still visible or realized as it must be if we need to be safe. And if you see, in the past, big kings and many gharana states were prevailing. This Facebook, Twitter, and all these social media sites, what is they are also behaving like that. Already tussle is going on. Our government is trying to control that thing, and we are every day getting the information. And one more thing I would like to take 2 minutes. India lives in villages. Okay, so if we will not develop the villages, if we will not take the technology to the villages, we cannot realize the dream of a developed country. So we should start thinking e-farmers, e-agriculture, and digital agriculture, digital farming. So to find some information, I was reading already FAO is already working on this issue, and e-farmer, e-agriculture is the need of the country to realize our dream of a developed country. In this direction, some progress has been made. For example, around 1,500 startups have come up to work in the agriculture fields, but still we are lagging much behind. I was reading a news a month ago why China is ahead economically, technologically. So the crux of that article was because China is using technology in each and every field. So I have learned from that article that we must increase the transformation of agriculture into e-agriculture to realize our potential. So I was listening to Mr. CBC fellow. No doubt, in this mission, CSC, VLE, we say VLE also, they can play a big role in digitization or in getting the e-farmer dream into reality through the CSC. So they can be knowledge provider, problem solver, of a village, because they are living, they are located in the village, and they have already the connection and required facility of the digital technology. So this is
So that's
all what
great.
I have to say. Thank
And
you.
Dr. Hiralal, thank you so much for sharing your perspective. And really, I think you brought in a new dimension to the whole discussion, because you are saying that while digital transformation is something that we must all adopt, but you're also highlighting that, we need to be responsible. We need to make sure it's enabling technology, not replacing technology. At the same time, we also need to ensure that there is adequate security and that we reskill and upskill our people. And beyond healthcare, you've also helped us understand that digital transformation has a role to play in villages, in agriculture, in farming, and such like. So thank you so much for sharing your perspectives. And that actually leads us into the next part of the discussion, which is that we have now heard all of our speakers speak about how, a digital transformation has helped in their respective work areas. Maybe we can go around one more time and understand that from each of us as to what has been the one big learning that you would like to share with our audience as you went through your digital transformation journey, which you believe our audience should be mindful of as they undertake such similar journeys in their own work areas. We could start with Iti, if that's okay with you. Uh, Please share with us that, this massive digital transformation that the railways is going through for the last 30 to 40 years. What has been maybe your one biggest learning which you would like to share with our audience today?
Definitely, the biggest learning experience has been our e-ticketing, and along with the e-ticketing, the cashless transactions that we've started with. So we've got the POS machine on every counter, and we have it in our goods sheds also. And now we have given it to the freight customers, which enables them to make an e-payment to our big freight customers, where we provided them with online payment facilities. The challenges that we faced in this is basically connectivity, because the network is a major issue. So sometimes what happens that there are huge payments to be made, especially in the area of freight, but the connectivity falls. So we need a higher upgraded kind of cable system and network system, which sometimes in small cities is not accessible. And that, I think, is one of the biggest impediments. You must know that railway has its own cable network, and so we are always, trying to make a breakthrough through that. But sometimes the payments do get caught, and we have a lot of discussions with the banks. Thankfully, that we have been doing it through the nationalized banks only, so the payment system is getting on hold. But otherwise, the apps also that we have made up, like our UTS app for e-ticketing purposes, or that we have the Spurti app for tracking down where the goods and services are at a particular time. That is another area which has been a challenge in implementing. As all of you are aware, somebody books a parcel and then they want to know where their mobile is at a particular time, or where the parcel is lying, or where their freight or goods is lying. So because the amount of time that we take is sometimes more than what is desired by the party, this tracking system has become very important. So I think this Spurti app, or for example, the PMS, what we call the parcel management system, that anything which has got to give a feedback to the passenger or to the freight carrier, in my opinion, is one of the biggest achievements that the Indian Railways has taken on itself. And we are working in that direction, of course, provided that network stays with us in most of the time. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that, Iti. And I hope, Rishikesh, you are making some notes on that, because you do hold a large part of the connectivity, at least for the rural and semi-urban areas. But let's move on to Naveen now and understand what has been, the learning that you would like to share, Naveen, as you implemented various digital transformation solutions for Telangana education.
So, Swati, I mean, in terms of implementing digital transformation solutions, as Iti has already pointed out, the basic challenges in terms of changing the mindset of the people, because initially there is some bit of reluctance to adopt the technologies, and also there is sometimes a fear that this technology may be replacing, as Dr. Hiralal has mentioned. Sometimes this is a definite fear among them, among the minds of the people who are holding various positions, that the technology which is coming their role has become redundant, and it will result in some loss of maybe employment or employment. So that is definitely one challenge. But I can say more than the implementation of digital transformation.
Naveen, I just request Dr. Hiralal ji to please mute himself. Dr. Hiralal ji, can you please mute yourself? We are not able to hear Naveen too well. Thank you.
Yeah. So, but in terms of digital learning, which has been one of the important things, in especially the COVID pandemic times, because we went through a prolonged lockdown, and even after the lockdown opened up, schools and colleges and institutions could not be really open. So we had to go in for more of online teaching, and that is the time when we really realized that the main bottleneck is access to devices with the students, and also net connectivity, bandwidth availability, as well as even the price of bandwidth, especially for families from the disadvantaged backgrounds. Because if you are attending a video class, suddenly even 1 or 2 GB of data is completely gone in a matter of a couple of days. And I think that is the reason why it is become very important actually for governments, both I would say central government and the state governments, to now start looking at initiatives to support students with the devices. I was happy to hear Punjab taking a step in that direction, but it's a huge expenditure, and I think only when the central and the state governments come together, we would be able to make a meaningful difference. Otherwise, these will be kind of piecemeal approaches, which will not kind of go to the last student. And I think that is something which is a big learning, especially from this COVID pandemic, in terms of how do you reach out to the more number of students.
That's very interesting, Naveen, because while Iti pointed out about, having connectivity, you are bringing in a new dimension to say that not only do we need to have connectivity, but we need to have affordable connectivity for the disadvantaged. And in addition to having connectivity, I think Jasminder brought that point out earlier, we are also looking at, actually creating an ecosystem where with connectivity, which is affordable, there are also devices that can be leveraged. So we are looking at almost a combination of sorts of multiple things to really enable and accelerate the benefits of digital transformation that states and centers are undertaking. So let's also now go back to Jasminder to hear about, what have been your learnings that you'd like to share as you implemented, AI, RPA and such like, and undertook several initiatives for education in Punjab.
So basically, as we people are concerned with providing all the kind of automation to different departments, so we happen to be the IT department for the state. Coming from the central ministry wherein we implemented. So I will take that particular journey forward. So 3 years back when we started up with the single nation, single application fundamental under the chairmanship of the Prime Minister. So we brought forward a very wonderful solution which was called Umang. So Unified Mobile Application for the New Age Governance. So under Umang, we collaborated all the applications across the states, across the country, across the central ministries, taking that ecosystem forward in the Punjab also when I joined the government here. So we started exploring on the similar line. So all the departments were isolated. So there was a definite need of integrating all those, as I was speaking previously as well. So once the integration was in place, so the service delivery that has to reach to the citizen has to be available across multiple channels. It is not that the citizen who does not has a smartphone or does not has a laptop should be left with himself and they don't have access to the services. That is the place where CSC team comes in place, and we have multiple stakeholders available from the CSCs at the village level or at the town level, where citizens can avail those kind of services. We have our own Seva Kendras also, from where more than 500 services are delivered to the citizen. Along with that, we have our mobile application called M-Seva, which fulfills the need of the people who are tech savvy and owns a smartphone. they can apply for the services of their family, their friends, or for themselves. We have provided the citizens with ability to use all those services from their laptop, from their desktop, via an online portal. So availability of services across multiple channel is one of the biggest advantage that we are these days going forward. We are already working on with the Ministry of IT, Government of India, wherein we are planning to deliver the services over voice-based systems as well. So using the voice to text technology, or the vice versa, text to voice, we are integrating the platform wherein citizens will be able to apply for, or at least verify their status of some of the services by dialing upon a number. They just have to either dial in the application number from their keypad, or they can just spell it out. The my application number is 1234, and we will tell out the status of where the application is. So leveraging such kind of technologies and providing the services, understanding that in country like ours, we have 70% rural population, 30% urban population, tech savvy people, non-tech savvy people, students. So the technology or the solution that should be delivered to the citizen has to be available on multi-channel. It cannot be, it cannot exist if it is just available on one of the, either on a portal or on a mobile app. It can't exist. So in
Correct.
order to provide that, we provided services. We came up with a helpline of 1100, wherein people can post their grievances. There is a grievance system which is available on mobile application also. It is available on the portal also. So all those services, be it grievance, be it service delivery, be it checking the status of their application, it is available across multi-channel, and that is one of the beautiful delivery or the achievement that we could done in last 1 to 2 years.
That's wonderful, Jasminder. And I think you bring in a new dimension of inclusivity and multi-channel to whatever Naveen and Iti had said. And so that, again, everybody has a chance to draw on the benefits of digital service delivery. Let's hear from Dr. Hiralal on what he believes has been, Dr. Hiralal, what has been one or two learnings that you would like to share with the audience on the ones that you shared around cybersecurity, reskilling, upskilling, and enabling rather than replacing?
Okay. Actually, I am associated with a project as a mentor, Model Gaon. Already I have given its URL in your chat. Actually, why this Model Gaon came to my mind? Because during the pandemic, urban people who had gone there came back to the villages. So some people started the concept of Model Gaon, and I am associated with that as a mentor. How to make villages a developed one, and how to make them a model, sustainable model. So I am trying to use CSC and BLE as knowledge provider and problem solver, or a facilitator to their knowledge in order to achieve this Model Gaon objective. So my learning is that we should go chalo gaon ki or. We should go back to the villages. We should bring the adequate and appropriate technology to the villages. And in that, CSC and BLE can be a very great help in our this mission. So I am of the opinion that we should focus our attention towards villages through technology. By using technology, we should develop our villages. This is my
Very well
learning.
said. Very well said, and thank you. Model Gaon Chalo Gaon ki or. Thank you, Dr. Hiralal. Maybe this is an opportune time for us to come to Rishikesh. Rishikesh, you've heard everyone talk about several things, and there was a fair degree of overlap in terms of what CSC does with most of these models. What would be your quick one or two learnings that you'd like to share basis the work that you're doing on the ground?
Yeah, thank you, Swati. I think there has been a lot of inputs given by the delegates. And one important aspect of which I see is data collection. In fact, from last many censuses which have been done, which has been manual, including the economic surveys which have been manual, and the SERO surveys which are going on in the districts, and many other such surveys. I think this was the 2019-20 was the opportunity where we could do the 7th economic survey using electronic means. So the survey was done on an app and data was collected and the report was presented. I think last 2-3 months back, the 7th economic census report has been published. So that data collection becomes automatic and electronic. That is a big digital transformation. And right now, data is the new oil. So I think that is the important aspect over here. Other than that, in the education space as such, personalized learning becomes important because each and every child's need is different. And we need to give that kind of personalized learning to the child. I think that becomes important. Multimodal content is important, as Dr. Hiralal and Jaswinder ji also pointed out, that content in multimodal dimensions need to be given, including to people with who are visually impaired or with low vision. I think that is the important aspect to get the inclusion done. Some of the universities like Delhi University and Banaras Hindu University started with open book exams. There was some reluctance from the student community, but in overall, it has been a successful model where students were able to give the exams and the remote proctored exams. NTA started with that, National Testing Agency. IIT JEE did it, remote proctored exam. And many other universities are now following up since 10th, 12th class exams are cancelled. So all those entrance exams are now remote proctored. I think that is a transformation which has happened. Also, Dr. Hiralal pointed out about the banking and financial services. I think that becomes important because when we are talking about roti, kapda, makan, the financial inclusion aspect, the banking services and the insurance becomes important because many people have actually not survived the COVID-19 pandemic, and the insurance policies like the Pradhan Mantri Suraksha Bima Yojana and similar other ones. I think that that needs to be awareness needs to be created amongst the rural communities. And we overall, summing this up, what we do is we call it a CSC DBT. Not the direct beneficiary transfer, but digital doctor, digital banker, and digital teacher. As Dr. Hiralal pointed out, chalo gaon ki or. So I think the digital villages concept, the gaon concept which he is talking about, I think digital villages concept, which was also announced by the Honorable Finance Minister during the last budget sessions, and I think that is shaping up. And nearly 1 lakh digital villages will be established by the Ministry of Electronics and IT, and there will be a lot of synergies because almost all the line ministries would be working in these digital villages, including a lot of corporates and industries. So that will be the amalgamation of all the technologies, all the governments, all the state governments, all the agencies. And that is where we see the paradigm shift and the transformations happening. Thank you so much.
Yes,
So,
absolutely. I love the term DBT. That's very interesting. And as we have all seen over the last 12 to 16 months with the onset of the pandemic, some of our digital transformation initiatives have really accelerated. And I would like to thank the panel members for sharing with us, right from, Naveen talking about Dost and Iti talking about Rail Madad and Spurti, and, Jasminder talking about how devices are being given out, to Hiralalji talking about model count, to Rishikesh talking about, this DBT concept that you just mentioned, and 1 lakh digital villages. We find that digital transformation has really accelerated and helped. Also, our panel members have been kind enough to share their learnings, which could serve as a bit of an advisory for all the other participants who are going to be implementing this. So as we wrap up this session, I would like to thank all of the panelists, and I would like to thank Fahim from GovConnect for this opportunity and this really invigorating session.
Thank you, Swati. Swati, actually, you have done a very good and smooth process in moderating this diverse panel, if I'll say, because we had people from education, from railway, then from SEMT, the government IT department, then from CSC, and then healthcare. So it was actually a very diverse panel with talking about, and each one of them talking variously about the public service delivery, how they are the digital transformation is using the digital transformation, basically, if I say. So with this, I'd really like to thank Swati. Thank you, Naveen sir, Eti ma'am, Rishikesh, Dr. Hiralal, Jasminder Pal Singh, and especially you. I think so almost most of you are like it's like been so kind to us for coming in our events. It's like almost all the events we do invite, and you do come for our panel discussion. So we are really grateful to you, and we are really, really thankful to you. So thank you, everyone. And with this, we'll end this panel. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.